Me and Jim Sterling rarely see eye to eye when it comes to his opinionated rant show, The Jimquisition. Ever since I first found him on The Escapist, I've always had a bit of a love-hate relationship with the guy. Watching his show every week tends to be a bit of a dice roll. Either he brings up solid points about the bullshit that the game industry loves to pull, or he publicly grandstands about how progressive and morally true his personal politics are. Now, I've been fine with this arrangement over the years. I mean, if we're being honest, his whole self-obsessed, holier-than-thou act is actually pretty entertaining. But after watching his most recent Jimquisition, it seems pretty clear that this is less of an act than I might have thought. Now, before we tear into this 20-minute virtue signal, let's start with a couple of points. Jim's going to talk a lot about game devs abusing YouTube's copyright system, taking critics to court, and covering up bad press. Now, it probably doesn't need to be said, but I agree wholeheartedly that these are dirty, underhanded tactics, and these devs deserve whatever legal or financial blowback they get from stooping to such slimy depths. I wanted to make that clear up front so that my criticism against Jim doesn't look like me siding with shit game developers looking to silence him. Also, his video is about 20 minutes long, and a good portion of it is him jerking himself off about how important he is. So in the interest of brevity, I'll be skipping around all that and focusing on the arguments that he's actually making. I will be linking the full video in the description, so feel free to check it out if you like. And with all that out of the way, let's jump right in.
That is the crux of Steam's real problem. Everywhere else has at least some minimal professional standards. Valve, seemingly, has none because it's focused only on one thing. Does the game work? If it's functional, it's sellable. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be that. And let's not look at the people selling them. Heaven no, even if they're fucking unhinged, volatile little monsters.
Round about 7 minutes in, Jim finally gets to his actual point, and this is how he starts it. By suggesting that Valve shouldn't be allowing just anyone to sell their games on Steam. Instead, Jim thinks they should be vetting game devs based on their personality, social interactions, and worst of all, on what Jim considers to be professional behavior. And while that makes a clear case for Jim being completely fucking delusional, it only gets worse from here.
This is Leto. He'll like that he just heard his own name because he's a tremendous egotist who has been thirsty for my attention, quite literally, for years. It's pathetic.
Those of you who watch a lot of the Jimquisition know that this would usually be where Jim would make a self-referential joke about how ironic that sentence was. I mean, a self-proclaimed egotistical person who plays a character on the internet for attention, insulting an egotistical, attention-hungry game dev. That joke pretty much writes itself. But it seems like he's either ignoring the irony or it's not clear to him just how much of a hypocrite he's being right now.
Leto is the creator of this shit-looking visual novel that somehow got its way onto Steam through Greenlight. He's also pissed off at game critics because they don't cover his badly drawn incest stories. What he doesn't know is I've been gathering plenty of examples of him throwing tantrums at myself, at Total Biscuit, at Jesse Cox, just hurling abuse out there because he thinks he deserves videos and reviews and he's not getting them. Leto has attempted to harass a number of game critics and he's gotten away with it because he thought nobody noticed. Well, I did. And I say this directly to Valve. Look at this man's Twitter feed. Look at this man's behavior.
Now, I haven't looked into this guy, so he may actually be a complete asshole, but isn't it a little weird that he has this on screen as he accuses the guy of harassment? Most of these tweets seem to either be absolutely benign or just criticism. I guess I could make a reference here to a certain internet crybaby whose whole career is based on her equating criticism to harassment. I think Jim does a good enough job of driving this point home himself.
Look at the multiple reports of harassment and customer abuse leveled at this person and ask yourself one simple question. Is that a man you'd hire to represent Valve? Is that a man you'd be seen doing business with? If the answer is no, then I say he has no business being on Steam in the first place. He has no business doing business with your business. And that's just best for business.
And this right here is where we hit peak bullshit. This is the part of the video where my jaw hit the fucking floor. Jim Sterling has graduated from calling out game devs who abuse Steam's rules to compiling evidence on people who he feels have slighted him personally and petitioning Steam directly to sever ties with these people based solely on their activities outside of Steam. I mean, I feel like I don't even need to say anything here. I can't be the only one who's worried about a guy with a massive audience keeping tabs on people that he finds to be in violation of his own personal moral code. And let's not forget, Jim's been invited to Valve's headquarters thanks to his coverage on the platform. This is a guy who clearly has Valve's ear, and now he's using that influence to tattle on a person who insulted him online. This is fucking insane.
So that's the question, the knockout question that I think should act as a new litmus test for would-be Steam games. Unlike the $100 fee for submitting things to Greenlight or Steam Direct, it would actually work to stop the very worst shit from infesting Steam. Because to the deluded, to the hacks, money's no object, they don't give a shit about the money. They seem to think they're genuinely great game developers, or at least deserve hundreds of dollars selling shit because, well, they're just entitled to it, aren't they? That's how they think. This litmus test wouldn't stop everything, but it would stop the nastiest and most ugly problem the storefront has. These wingnut fucksticks who don't just make shit games, but turn out to be shit people on top of it. And I don't think that that's a draconian rule. Don't be a shit person. It's not that hard. Unless you're a shit person.
One thing I can be really thankful for is Jim has now made it nearly impossible for me to be accused of misrepresenting him. From his own mouth, his position is, people he finds to be shitty don't deserve to be on Steam. So instead of sticking to a clearly defined set of rules that can be applied equally to everyone, Steam should be in the business of making moral judgments on a game developer's character. And the absolute best part of the moral grandstanding is that he thinks punishing people for violating rules that he made up falls outside of the definition of draconian. Hint, it doesn't.
Should Valve have continued to allow Fatfly to keep uploading copy after copy of his repeatedly unvoted shooter tactics? You'd think after the first time he called all these critics fucking queers, that Valve wouldn't want him anywhere near their service, but no. He continued for years, railing against the queers and renaming his games to things like tactical anal insertion as his mind unravelled in public.
Now this we can agree on. Uploading multiple copies of a game under different names and being verbally abusive on Steam's forums seems to violate Steam's terms of use, and if Fatfly was kicked off of Steam, it would be because he specifically violated Steam's rules. The only problem is, issuing false takedown notices on YouTube, while completely fucked up and fairly illegal, have nothing to do with Steam. If it didn't happen on Valve's platform, I can't see why it should be punished there. It's like not letting people who get speeding tickets shop at gas stations.
The list of warped wannabe game developers who have stepped way beyond the lines of professionalism is shockingly long and sprawling enough to where I wouldn't be able to remember them all. Though of course my brain is a highly honed database of the ones that have personally pissed me off and that I've got grudges over.
And here we have it. This video's thesis statement is, as far as I'm concerned, developers deserve to be booted from Steam because they've
personally pissed me off. But I say Valve takes a long, hard look at companies like Cobra Studio, who make games like this, then call their critics liars when they point out their games look like shit. I say Valve takes a long, hard look at companies like Stickly Games, who invented unenforceable terms of service for their terrible airport game, and even tried to circumvent YouTube's own copyright system by filing for a trademark violation over negative video coverage. I say Valve takes a long, hard look at Fun and how its quote-unquote developer publicly and falsely accused a respected industry composer of lying, to say nothing of the further examples of cringeworthy behaviour.
I'm sorry, but in what way are these things related? Is calling someone on Twitter a liar grounds for being kicked off of Steam? I'm gonna go ahead and take a gamble by saying no, it's not. But let's say it is. How do you justify that? How can a person be so deluded that they can square such a ridiculous line of thinking? Twitter and Steam are two completely separate entities. Just because you're a developer who's selling a product on Steam doesn't mean that your social interactions on Twitter should be put under the microscope. And even if they are, they shouldn't be grounds for being kicked off of a completely separate platform. I mean, I'm not crazy, right? That makes sense? I'm not the only one who thinks this way?
I say Valve looks at these companies and more and asks that question. Would we hire these people? Because right now, Valve, you're doing business with all of them, and what you're saying by doing that is it's okay to have zero decorum, zero composure, zero professional respect, and zero ability to handle selling your product in a public space. You're saying this behaviour is cool by you.
Yeah, Valve. By standing by and doing nothing, you're making it clear that it's okay to do business with people that Jim Sterling does not like. Don't you realize how terrible it is that you would be associated with people that some guy on YouTube finds distasteful? How depraved can you be?
And that's why altering the trading card system, putting $100 fees in place, all that jazz, won't work. Because when you start letting anybody sell games on your service unchecked, that includes random fucking weirdos. Straight up fucking weirdos who do not have a working relationship with reality, let alone anybody else.
Listen, this might be a little petty, but is it just me or is Jim describing two of his absolute favorite game designers? Alright, so listen guys, I'm gonna cut it here. There's about 5 more minutes of rambling, but I think he's made his point, so I'm gonna make mine. People are fucking assholes. Yeah, that's it. My point is, people can be absolute assholes. Add the internet to the equation, and things get even worse. That being said, I don't think people being assholes on the internet should make them worthy of losing their livelihood. Personally insulting Jim Sterling is not a punishable offense. At least I hope it's not, because I do it all the fucking time. But really and truly, that's not what I'm taking issue with. At the end of the day, these are just Jim's opinions, and I support him expressing them. What I don't support is a person who's been shown to have a fairly open channel of communication with Valve, petitioning them to get rid of developers for no reason other than they are, quote, weirdos who have pissed him off. Despite what he goes on to say, this is about as draconian and authoritarian as it gets. It is absolutely, without a doubt, none of Valve's business who has or hasn't been insulting Jim Sterling on Twitter, and it certainly isn't Jim's job to accrue evidence of wrongthink as some kind of leverage to affect people's income if they choose to step out of line. This video is the tip of a very slippery slope. If videos like this continue to come out, a large portion of Steam's thriving indie game community will be held to the moral standards of a morbidly obese man who makes toys fuck each other on a camera set up in his bedroom. Now, to be fair, Jim did cover some actual shitty behavior that actively goes against Steam's rules, and I'm right there with him in hoping that Valve will do a better job of enforcing those rules. But I can't get behind the idea of a multi-million-dollar company acting as Jim Sterling's internet police. Now, there's a chance that this video has been a bit of venting for him, and I'm aware that his character is supposed to be egotistical and maniacal, but the chance that this isn't some kind of sick joke really scares me. And unlike Jim, I'm not going to use my platform to demand punishment. I'm not going to suggest you stop watching his content or tell anybody what he's doing. In fact, I'm not going to stop myself. Even though he said some ridiculous shit and outright demanded that his request be met, I'm not an authoritarian. Aside from expressing my disagreement, there's not much else I can really do. And I think that's the real lesson here. Now, let's hope Jim learns that at some point, hopefully. Alright guys, thanks for checking out another episode of Talking Points. If you like videos like this where I just kind of ramble about bullshit that I hate or love maybe, then think about clicking that subscribe button, or maybe head on down to my Patreon and support more videos just like this one.